Immediately Chloe's gentle hands touched the mysterious millionaire's chest. She had no idea she was awakening a sleeping giant whose secrets would shatter her world like glass. His eyes opened like dawn breaking after the longest night, and in that moment, destiny dealt them both a hand that would change everything. What happened next wasn't just a medical miracle. It was the universe conspiring to unite two souls who had been searching for each other across time itself. Chloe Martins had always believed that healing happened in whispers, not miracles. At 26, she'd spent 4 years as a nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital, and she'd learned that recovery was usually a slow dance between medicine and hope, rarely the dramatic awakening that families prayed for in waiting rooms. This Tuesday morning felt no different as she walked through the private wing, her soft-soled shoes silent against the polished floors. Roommate 47 housed her most mysterious patient, a man who'd been brought in 3 months ago after a devastating car accident, his expensive suit cut away by paramedics, his identity a puzzle that no one had solved. "Good morning, John," she said softly, using the name the hospital had assigned him. The man lay motionless, his face peaceful despite the trauma that had brought him here. Handsome, probably in his 40s, with salt and pepper hair and hands that had never known manual labor. Everything about him whispered of wealth, yet no one had come looking for him. Chloe began her morning routine, checking his vitals, adjusting his speaking to him as if he could hear every word. The other nurses thought she was foolish, talking to an unconscious patient, but Chloe had learned from her grandmother that voices could reach places medicine couldn't touch. "The weather's getting colder," she said, adjusting his blankets. "I bet you're someone who enjoys autumn. You look like the type who would appreciate changing seasons." She paused, studying his peaceful face. "I wonder if anyone's missing you out there. It seems impossible that someone like you could just disappear without anyone noticing." The morning sun streamed through the window, casting golden patterns across his still features. Chloe found herself wondering about his story. Was he a businessman? A father? What had he been doing on that rain-slicked highway at midnight 3 months ago? "Chloe," Dr. Peterson's voice interrupted her thoughts. "How's our mystery patient this morning?" "Stable. No changes." She turned to face the doctor, a kind man in his 50s who'd become something of a mentor to her. "Any word from missing persons?" "Nothing. It's the strangest case I've seen in 30 years. Dr. Peterson checked the chart. His medical bills are being paid by some kind of anonymous trust. Someone knows who he is, but they're not coming forward." Chloe looked back at the patient. Maybe they can't. Maybe something's keeping them away. Or maybe, Dr. Peterson said quietly, they think he's already dead. Meanwhile, 40 miles away in a cramped FBI field office, Agent Sarah Williams stared at a wall covered with photographs, financial records, and connection charts. For 8 months, she'd been tracking one of the largest Medicare fraud cases in federal history, but her primary suspect had vanished just days before his scheduled congressional testimony. "Still no leads on Castellano?" her partner Agent Martinez asked, setting a coffee cup on her cluttered desk. "It's like he evaporated," Sarah replied, frustrated. Vincent Castellano was set to testify about irregularities in his pharmaceutical company's billing practices. Then, 3 days before the hearing, his security detail found his car at the bottom of Miller's Ravine. No body, no witnesses, no explanation. She picked up a surveillance photo of Vincent Castellano leaving his office building. A distinguished man in his early 40s, the kind of face that would be hard to forget. The question is, did he run because he's guilty, or because he knew something that made him dangerous to the real criminals? "What's your gut telling you?" Martinez asked. Sarah studied the photo. In it, Vincent was helping an elderly woman out of a car, his face showing genuine kindness. "My gut says that guilty men don't usually stick around long enough to get caught. And innocent men don't usually disappear without a trace. So what does that make Vincent Castellano?" Sarah pinned the photo back to the board. That makes him either very smart or very dead. And until we find a body, I'm betting on smart. What Sarah didn't know was that Vincent Castellano was neither smart nor dead. He was lying unconscious in a hospital bed 40 miles away, being cared for by a nurse who hummed Spanish lullabies and had no idea she was tending to one of the FBI's most wanted witnesses. Welcome back to Liam's Stories. If you're new here, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss these life-changing stories of love, hope, and redemption. Your support means the world to me. Now let's continue. 2 weeks passed in comfortable routine. Chloe found herself looking forward to her shifts with John Doe more than she cared to admit. There was something peaceful about caring for him, something that made her feel useful in a way that went beyond medical training. "I brought you something today," she said during her morning rounds, pulling out her phone to show him a photo. "This is my grandmother, Maria Elena. She died 2 years ago, but she taught me everything I know about taking care of people." She held the phone near his face, as if he could see. She used to say that healing wasn't just about medicine. It was about presence. About showing up for people when they can't show up for themselves. Chloe smiled softly. "I think she would have liked you. She always said I should find someone peaceful." As she spoke, Chloe began humming a melody her grandmother had sung to her as a child. "Do meet me, Niño, do meet me, amor." The lullaby filled the quiet room, and for just a moment, Chloe could have sworn she saw his breathing change slightly. "Did you see that?" she asked Dr. Peterson when he arrived for rounds. "See what?" "His breathing. When I was humming, it seemed to shift, like he was listening." Dr. Peterson checked the monitors. "All his vitals are normal, Chloe. Sometimes we see what we want to see." But Chloe wasn't imagining things. Over the following days, she began to notice small changes. When she spoke to him, his heart rate seemed to stabilize. When she hummed her grandmother's lullaby, his breathing deepened. When she held his hand during procedures, his blood pressure remained steady. "You're in there, aren't you?" she whispered one evening during the night shift. "You can hear me. I don't know why, but I feel like you're waiting for something. Or someone." She found herself sharing more personal stories. About growing up with her grandmother, about her dreams of becoming a nurse, about the strange fragments of memories from her early childhood that she could never quite piece together. "I have these dreams sometimes," she confessed one night. "About a big house with marble floors and gardens that seemed to go on forever. There was a boy there who was kind to me, who made me feel safe. But then there was fire and smoke, and we had to leave, and I never saw him again." She paused, feeling foolish. "I know it sounds silly, talking to you about childhood dreams, but sometimes when I look at you, I feel like you might understand." What Chloe didn't notice was that during these intimate conversations, John Doe's brain activity, invisible to the standard monitors, was increasing. Deep in his unconscious mind, Vincent Castellano was fighting his way back to consciousness, drawn by a voice that felt like coming home. Agent Sarah Williams spread the newest financial records across her desk, looking for patterns that might explain Vincent Castellano's disappearance. The Medicare fraud case was more complex than she'd initially realized. Millions of dollars had been diverted from patient care accounts, but the money trail was deliberately convoluted. "Look at this," she said to Martinez, pointing to a series of payments. Castellano's company was billing Medicare for treatments that were never provided, but the money wasn't going into his personal accounts. Where was it going? That's the million-dollar question. Some of it went to shell companies, some to offshore accounts, but a significant portion. Sarah traced her finger along a column of numbers. A significant portion was being funneled into anonymous medical trusts. Martinez frowned. Medical trusts for what? Patient care. Specifically, experimental treatments for rare diseases. Sarah leaned back in her chair. What if Castellano wasn't stealing the money? What if he was redirecting it? From Medicare fraud to, what? Unauthorized medical research. Or authorized medical research that someone else was trying to shut down. Sarah picked up another file. Look at this. 6 months before the investigation began, Castellano was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition. The treatment costs over $200,000 a month. So he was stealing money to pay for his own treatment? Maybe. Or maybe he was trying to develop affordable treatments for people with the same condition. Sarah stood up, pacing. The timeline doesn't add up for simple theft. If he was just stealing money, why set up such an elaborate system? Why the medical trusts? Why the research funding? Martinez studied the papers. You think someone else was behind the fraud, and Castellano found out? I think Vincent Castellano discovered that his company was being used as a front for something bigger, and when he tried to expose it, he became a liability. Sarah looked at the surveillance photos again. The question is, did they succeed in eliminating him, or is he still out there somewhere? What Sarah couldn't have known was that Vincent was indeed still out there. Unconscious and unidentified, but very much alive, being cared for by a nurse whose voice was slowly calling him back from the darkness. Chloe had been humming her grandmother's lullaby for nearly an hour when she noticed it. The slightest flutter of his eyelids. After 3 months of complete stillness, any movement was significant. Dr. Peterson, she called softly, not wanting to leave John Doe's side. When no answer came, she pressed the call button and continued her gentle ministrations, washing his face with the warm cloth as she had every morning. "Dua meet me, niño, dua meet me, amor." The Spanish words flowed from her lips as naturally as breathing. Her grandmother had sung this song to her through countless nights, and somehow it felt right to share it with this mysterious man who had no one else. His breathing changed deeper, more intentional. Chloe's heart began to race as she realized this wasn't a muscle spasm or involuntary movement. Something was happening. "That's it," she whispered encouragingly. "I'm here. You're safe. Take your time." His lips parted slightly, and the faintest whisper escaped. "Maria?" Chloe's washcloth slipped from her hands, landing in the basin with a splash. That name, her grandmother's name. A name she'd mentioned countless times during their one-sided conversations, but hearing it from his lips felt like a miracle. "Yes," she breathed. "Maria Elena. She was my grandmother. You remember?" His eyes opened slowly, unfocused but unmistakably aware. They were the deepest brown Chloe had ever seen, and as they found her face, she felt something shift in the universe, a recognition that went deeper than memory. "You sang to me," he whispered, his voice rusty from months of silence. "Every day. I heard you." Chloe felt tears streaming down her face. "You could hear me? All this time?" He tried to nod, the movement clearly difficult. "Your voice, it was the only thing that felt real." Dr. Peterson rushed into the room, followed by 2 nurses, and suddenly the intimate moment was broken by medical necessity. But as the team worked around them, checking vitals and responses, Chloe kept her eyes locked on her patient's face. "What's your name?" Dr. Peterson asked, shining a light in the man's eyes. He looked at Chloe for a long moment, as if drawing strength from her presence. Then, his voice growing stronger, "Vincent. Vincent Castellano." Chloe felt the name hit her like lightning. Vincent Castellano. She'd heard that name somewhere recently, but where? It felt important, significant in a way that went beyond this moment. "Vincent," Chloe repeated softly, testing how his real name felt on her tongue. "I'm Chloe. I've been taking care of you." "Chloe," Vincent said, and the way he spoke her name made her feel like she'd been waiting her whole life to hear it from his lips. "I know. I've been waiting for you to find me." As the medical team continued their assessments, Chloe realized that everything was about to change. Vincent Castellano was no longer her mysterious John Doe. He was a real person with a real name and a real story. But something told her that his awakening was just the beginning of a much larger mystery. "Don't leave me," Vincent whispered when the doctors stepped away to confer. "Please. I don't understand what's happening, but I know I need you." Chloe took his hand, feeling the electricity of genuine human connection. "I'm not going anywhere," she promised, having no idea that this moment would test that promise in ways she couldn't imagine. "Vincent Castellano," Dr. Peterson was saying to his colleague. "That name sounds familiar. Isn't he?" But Chloe wasn't listening to the doctor's conversation. She was lost in Vincent's eyes, in the impossible feeling that she'd come home to a person she'd never met, in the certainty that whatever came next, their lives were now inextricably linked. Outside, storm clouds were gathering, and in a federal building 40 miles away, Agent Sarah Williams was about to discover that her missing witness had been found. The warm washcloth trembled in Chloe Martins's hands as she gently cleaned the unconscious man's weathered face. 3 months. 3 months of caring for this nameless patient in the private wing of St. Catherine's Hospital, and still no family had come forward. The nurses called him John Doe, but Chloe had started thinking of him as the businessman. His expensive watch and tailored suit remnants suggested wealth, yet here he lay, utterly alone. "You know," she whispered, continuing her routine as she had every morning, "I keep wondering what your story is. Were you running to someone or away from them when the accident happened?" The steady beep of monitors filled the silence. Chloe dipped the cloth in the basin, watching ripples spread across the surface. At 26, she'd been a nurse for 4 years, but this patient haunted her differently than others. Something about his face, even in unconsciousness, seemed achingly familiar, though she couldn't place why. She moved the cloth across his forehead, humming softly, a lullaby her grandmother used to sing. "Dua meet me, Niño, dua meet me, amor." His eyelids fluttered. Chloe's breath caught, but she'd seen this before. Involuntary muscle movements were common in coma patients. She continued humming, gently cleaning around his eyes. Then his hand moved. Not a twitch, a deliberate movement, fingers curling slightly. "Dr. Peterson," she called softly toward the door, not wanting to leave his side. When no answer came, she pressed the call button with her elbow, never taking her eyes off his face. His lips parted slightly, and the faintest whisper escaped. "Maria?" Chloe's washcloth dropped into the basin with a splash. That name, her grandmother's name. The name she'd whispered to him, just yesterday, while sharing stories of her childhood, thinking he couldn't hear. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused but unmistakably aware. They were the deepest brown she'd ever seen, and as they found her face, something extraordinary happened. Recognition sparked in them, as if he knew her. You're awake," Chloe breathed, her professional training warring with the inexplicable emotion flooding through her. He tried to speak but could only manage a hoarse whisper. "The singing. I heard your grandmother's song." Chloe's heart stopped. How could he possibly know that? She'd never told him it was her grandmother's lullaby. His gaze never left hers as he struggled to form words. "I've been waiting for you to find me." Before Chloe could process what he meant, footsteps thundered down the hallway. Dr. Peterson burst through the door, followed by 2 other physicians, but Chloe barely noticed them. She was lost in those brown eyes that seemed to hold secrets she desperately needed to understand. "Miracle recovery," Dr. Peterson was saying, checking vitals and shining lights in the patient's eyes. "Completely unprecedented. We need to run tests immediately." But the mysterious man, no longer John Doe, kept his eyes fixed on Chloe as if she were his anchor to consciousness. And in that moment, she felt something shift in her chest, a recognition that went deeper than memory, as if her heart knew something her mind hadn't yet grasped. "What's your name?" Dr. Peterson asked the patient. His voice grew stronger, though his eyes never left Chloe's face. "Vincent. Vincent Castellano." The name hit Chloe like lightning. Vincent Castellano. She'd read that name somewhere recently. "Where?" As the medical team bustled around them, checking monitors and preparing transfer protocols, Vincent managed to lift his hand slightly. Chloe, acting on pure instinct, placed her palm against his. "Don't leave me," he whispered, so softly only she could hear. "Please. I think I've been looking for you my whole life." The private room felt smaller now that Vincent was awake. Chloe had convinced Dr. Peterson to let her stay during his initial recovery. After all, she'd been his primary caregiver for 3 months. What she didn't mention was the inexplicable pull she felt to remain by his side, as if leaving would somehow break whatever fragile connection had formed between them. "The tests show remarkable recovery," Dr. Peterson had said an hour earlier. "Brain function is normal, motor skills intact. It's like he was just waiting to wake up." Now, in the quiet afternoon light filtering through the hospital blinds, Chloe sat beside Vincent's bed as he sipped water through a straw. His color had returned, and those deep brown eyes held an alertness that seemed to see straight through her. "You said my grandmother's song," Chloe said softly, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. "How is that possible?" Vincent set down the water cup with trembling hands. Not from weakness, but from something that looked like nervous anticipation. "What was her name?" "Your grandmother?" "Maria Elena Vasquez." The words came out as barely a whisper. Vincent's face crumbled, and tears began streaming down his cheeks. "She used to sing that song to a little girl. Every night. A little girl with the biggest brown eyes and a laugh that could fill a room." Chloe's world tilted. "What are you saying?" "Maria Elena. She worked for my family when I was young. She was our housekeeper, but she was so much more than that. She practically raised me after my mother died." Vincent's voice cracked. "And she had a granddaughter who would visit sometimes. A little girl about 5 years younger than me. We played together in the gardens of my father's estate." The room felt like it was spinning. Chloe gripped the chair arms. That's impossible." "Is it?" Vincent struggled to sit up straighter. "A little girl named Chloe who wanted to be a nurse even when she was 7. Who used to bandage her dolls and said she'd fix everyone who was broken." Chloe's breath came in short gasps. Fragments of memories, suppressed for so long, began flooding back. A grand house with marble floors. A boy with kind eyes who shared his books with her. Playing hide-and-seek in gardens that seemed endless. And then nothing. The memories stopped abruptly. "I remember a fire," she whispered, the words coming from somewhere deep inside. "Smoke and shouting, and Abuela crying." Vincent nodded, his face etched with old pain. "My father's business partners. They blamed him for a failed deal, said he'd stolen from them. They came to the house one night with intentions to hurt him, but he wasn't there. Only Maria Elena and you." His voice broke. "The fire was meant to send a message." "We lost everything," Chloe said, the memories crystallizing. "Abuela never talked about it. We moved across the country. She said we were starting over, that the past was too dangerous to remember." "I looked for you," Vincent said urgently, reaching for her hand. "For years, I looked for you both. My father had enemies, and Maria Elena knew staying connected to us would put you in danger. She disappeared completely to protect you." Chloe felt tears streaming down her face. "She died 2 years ago. Cancer. She never told me about you. She was protecting you until the end." Vincent's thumb traced circles on her palm. "But Chloe, don't you see? This isn't coincidence. Of all the hospitals, all the nurses, all the patients, you ended up caring for me. You brought me back with her song, with the love she taught us both." The afternoon light shifted, casting golden patterns across the hospital room. Chloe looked at this man, this stranger who somehow held pieces of her forgotten childhood, and felt something profound settling in her chest. "I felt it too," she admitted. "From the first day you were brought in. Like I knew you somehow." Vincent smiled through his tears. "She used to say that some people are connected by invisible threads. That love finds a way, even across time and distance." Vincent Castellano, Chloe said his name slowly, testing how it felt. I remember now. You taught me to read. You said I was the smartest girl you'd ever met. You are, he said simply. You saved my life, Chloe. In more ways than one. As if drawn by some force beyond their control, Chloe leaned closer. Vincent's hand cupped her cheek, and for a moment, 20 years dissolved between them. I can't believe it's really you, she whispered. Believe it, Vincent said softly. We found each other again. Against all odds, we found each other again. The heart monitor's steady beeping seemed to synchronize with Chloe's pulse as she realized that caring for this mysterious patient hadn't just been her job. It had been her destiny coming full circle. 3 days later, Chloe's world shattered completely. She'd been floating in a bubble of rediscovered connection, spending every free moment with Vincent as he regained his strength. They'd shared stories, filled in the gaps of their separated lives, and Chloe had begun to believe in something that felt dangerously close to fate. Until Dr. Peterson called her into his office with a folder marked confidential, and an expression that made her stomach drop. Chloe, I need you to sit down. She remained standing, crossing her arms defensively. What's wrong? Is Vincent okay? Vincent is fine physically, but there are some things about his case that you need to know. Dr. Peterson opened the folder, revealing newspaper clippings and police reports. Vincent Castellano wasn't brought here after a random accident. The first headline made Chloe's knees buckle. Pharmaceutical heir flees country amid fraud investigation. He's wanted for questioning in a massive Medicare fraud scheme, Dr. Peterson continued gently. His company was billing for treatments that were never provided, medications that were never delivered. Millions of dollars, Chloe. Money that was supposed to help sick and elderly patients. Chloe sank into the chair, her hands shaking as she read. That can't be right. There's more. Dr. Peterson turned the page to reveal another headline. Castellano Enterprises CEO missing before congressional hearing. He was fleeing the country when his car accident occurred. The FBI has been waiting for him to wake up. Dr. Peterson's voice was gentle but firm. Chloe, I've watched you these past few days. I know you care about him, but you need to understand what you're dealing with. Chloe's vision blurred as she read detail after detail of Vincent's alleged crimes. Elderly patients denied care. Cancer treatments that never arrived. Families bankrupted while Vincent's company profited. The patients you care for every day, Dr. Peterson said quietly. Some of them might have been helped with that stolen money. Chloe thought of Mrs. Williams in room 304, who couldn't afford her heart medication. Of little Tommy, whose family was drowning in debt from his leukemia treatments. Of all the people she'd watched suffer, while insurance companies and pharmaceutical executives lived in luxury. He lied to me, she whispered. Chloe, I'm not saying he's guilty. That's for the courts to decide. But I am saying you need to be careful. The FBI will be here tomorrow morning. That evening, Chloe stood in Vincent's doorway, the newspaper clippings burning in her pocket. He looked up at her with those same kind eyes that had enchanted her as a child, the same smile that had made her believe in fairy tales. You came, he said warmly. I was hoping we could have dinner together. The hospital food isn't exactly romantic, but... Tell me about Castellano Enterprises, Chloe interrupted, her voice cold. Vincent's smile faltered. What? Tell me about the Medicare fraud. Tell me about the missing medications. Tell me about the families you destroyed. The color drained from Vincent's face. Chloe, let me explain. Explain what? That while I've been changing bedpans and holding the hands of patients who can't afford treatment, you've been stealing money meant for people like them. Her voice rose, and she didn't care who heard. That you've been lying to me for days while I fell for your story about destiny and invisible threads. It's not what you think, Vincent said desperately, trying to sit up. Yes, there were problems with the company, but I wasn't. Problems? Chloe's laugh was bitter. Stealing millions of dollars from sick people are problems. I was trying to fix it. That's why I was leaving the country. Not to escape, but to meet with investigators in Switzerland who had evidence about who was really behind. Stop. Chloe held up her hand. Just stop. I've heard enough lies. Vincent's eyes filled with tears. Chloe, please. You know me. You knew me as a child. I would never. I knew a child 20 years ago. I don't know who you became. Chloe pulled the newspaper clippings from her pocket and threw them on his bed. I don't know the man who could look at suffering patients and see profit margins. That's not who I am, Vincent pleaded. Chloe, you have to believe me. Everything I told you about us, about finding each other again, that's all true. Is it? Chloe's voice broke. Or was that just another manipulation? Poor little nurse who grew up with nothing. Easy mark for the rich boy who always got what he wanted. The words hung in the air like poison. Vincent stared at her as if she'd physically struck him. You think I've been manipulating you? His voice was barely audible. The FBI will be here tomorrow, Chloe said, backing toward the door. I hope whatever story you tell them is more convincing than the one you told me. She turned to leave, but Vincent's voice stopped her. Chloe, wait. Please. Just ask yourself one question. If I'm such a master manipulator, why did I spend 3 months in a coma waiting for you to find me? Why didn't I wake up for any other nurse? Chloe paused in the doorway, her heart breaking and mending and breaking again. Maybe, she said without turning around, you're a better liar than I thought. As she walked away, Vincent's anguished voice followed her down the hallway. Maria Elena always said the truth finds a way. Don't give up on the truth, Chloe. Please. But Chloe kept walking, tears streaming down her face, wondering how something that felt so much like love could hurt this badly. Chloe didn't sleep that night. She sat in her small apartment, surrounded by the newspaper articles she'd printed from online searches, trying to piece together the truth about Vincent Castellano. The more she read, the more confused she became. Some articles painted him as a calculating criminal who lived in luxury while patients suffered. Others suggested he was a whistleblower who'd discovered the fraud and was trying to expose it. The timeline was murky, the facts contradictory. At 3 a.m., her phone rang. It was her colleague Jenny from the night shift. Chloe, you need to come in. Something's wrong with your patient in the private wing. Chloe's heart clenched. What kind of wrong? His vitals are crashing. Dr. Peterson's on his way, but... Chloe, I think he's giving up. 20 minutes later, Chloe stood outside Vincent's room, watching through the window as Dr. Peterson worked frantically. Vincent's face was grey, his breathing shallow. The monitors showed dangerous irregularities. What happened? Chloe asked Jenny. I don't know. He was fine at midnight rounds. When I checked at 2:30, he was like this. It's like his body just decided to shut down. Chloe knew better. She'd seen it before. Patients who lost the will to live, whose bodies simply stopped fighting. She thought of Vincent's face when she'd called him a liar, the devastation in his eyes when she'd walked away. Dr. Peterson emerged from the room, pulling off his gloves. We've stabilized him for now, but I'm concerned. There's no medical reason for this decline. What about the FBI interview tomorrow? Chloe asked. Postponed indefinitely. He's in no condition to be questioned. Chloe stood in the hallway as the dawn shift arrived, staring through the window at Vincent's unconscious form. He looked exactly as he had 3 months ago when they'd first brought him in, peaceful but unreachable. Her phone buzzed with a text from her cousin Sophia. Cleaning out Abuela's storage unit today. Found some boxes you might want. Chloe almost ignored it, but something made her respond. I'll be there in an hour. The storage unit was musty and dim. Sophia had already sorted through most of Maria Elena's belongings, but she handed Chloe a small wooden box. I thought you might want this. It has some of her personal papers and photos. Chloe opened the box with trembling hands. On top was a letter in her grandmother's careful handwriting, addressed to her. The date was from just 2 months before Maria Elena died. Mija, the letter began. If you are reading this, then God has called me home, and you are searching for answers about your past. I have kept secrets to protect you, but perhaps it is time for the truth. The boy from the big house, Vincent, he was not our enemy. When his father's business collapsed and dangerous people came looking for revenge, Vincent was the one who warned us. He was only 17, but he risked his own safety to get us out of that house before they returned. For years after we left, he sent money. Anonymous payments that helped with your schooling, your mother's medical bills, our rent. He never forgot us, Mija. Even when he had nothing to gain and everything to lose, he took care of his family. I know he grew up to have troubles in his business. I read the newspapers. But I also know his heart, and his heart is good. If you ever find him again, remember that some people are worth fighting for. Remember that love is stronger than fear. Your loving abuela, Maria Elena. Chloe's hands shook as she read the letter twice, then 3 times. At the bottom of the box were bank statements showing anonymous deposits spanning 15 years. Exactly what her grandmother had described. Her phone rang. It was Dr. Peterson. "Chloe, you need to come in. We just received Vincent's medical records from his previous physician. There's something you need to see." An hour later, Chloe sat in Dr. Peterson's office staring at a stack of medical files. "Vincent has been battling a rare autoimmune condition for the past 3 years," Dr. Peterson explained. "It's progressive, eventually fatal. The medications alone cost over $200,000 a month. What does this have to do with the fraud charges? Everything. Look at these dates." Dr. Peterson pointed to the timeline. The Medicare fraud investigation began 6 months after Vincent's diagnosis. And look at this. His company was developing a treatment protocol for his exact condition. Chloe's mind raced. "You think he was trying to help other patients with the same disease?" "I think he was trying to find a way to make the treatment affordable. But somewhere in that process, lines got crossed. Money got misallocated. People got hurt." Dr. Peterson leaned back in his chair. "Chloe, I've seen this before. Good people making desperate choices when they're facing death. But the headlines said he was stealing millions. Headlines aren't always the whole story. I spoke with the FBI agent who's handling the case. They think Vincent was trying to expose the real criminals when his car accident happened. That's why they need his testimony." Chloe felt the world shifting again. Is he going to survive this illness? With proper treatment and the will to live? Maybe. But Chloe, his condition deteriorated rapidly after your argument last night. Sometimes the heart affects the body in ways we can't measure. That evening, Chloe stood once again in Vincent's doorway. He was awake but staring at the ceiling, his face hollow and resigned. "I brought you something," she said quietly, entering the room. He turned his head slightly, but didn't speak. Chloe sat beside his bed and pulled out her grandmother's letter. "Abuela left me this. She wanted me to know the truth about what you did for us." Vincent's eyes filled with tears as Chloe read the letter aloud. When she finished, the room was silent except for the steady beep of monitors. "She never forgot you either," Chloe said softly. "And neither did I, not really. I just buried the memories because they hurt too much." "I never meant for people to get hurt," Vincent whispered. "I was trying to fix the system, trying to find a way to help people like me who couldn't afford treatment. But I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people." "Are you going to die?" Chloe asked bluntly. Vincent managed a weak smile. "We're all going to die, Chloe. The question is whether we live first." Chloe took his hand. "Then live. Fight the charges, tell your story, help the FBI find the real criminals. But don't give up." "Why?" Vincent's voice was barely audible. "What do I have to live for?" Chloe leaned closer, her voice strong and sure. "You have me. You have us. You have the chance to finish what you started. Helping people, fixing what's broken. And Vincent. Yeah. You have the chance to love me the way we never got to before. If you want it." For the first time in days, Vincent's eyes held hope. "Do you mean that?" "I mean it," Chloe said, and she kissed his forehead gently. "But first you have to fight. For us. For the truth. For all the patients who need someone to stand up for them." Vincent squeezed her hand. "I can fight if you're fighting with me." "Always," Chloe promised. "We're connected by invisible threads, remember?" As the monitors began showing stronger steadier rhythms. Chloe knew they had found their way back to each other again. Not as the children they once were, but as the adults they'd chosen to become. The hardest battles still lay ahead, but they would face them together. 6 months later, Chloe adjusted her cap and gown as she walked across the courthouse steps, Vincent's hand firmly clasped in hers. Behind them, reporters shouted questions, but she barely heard them over the pounding of her heart. "Vincent Castellano, how does it feel to be vindicated?" one reporter called out. "Mr. Castellano, will you be seeking damages from the real perpetrators?" Vincent paused at the bottom of the steps, Chloe beside him. His face had regained its color over the past months, though he was thinner now, forever changed by his illness and the battle they'd fought together. 6 months ago, Vincent said, his voice clear and strong, I woke up from a coma to discover that the life I thought I'd built was built on lies. Not my lies, but the lies of people I trusted. I also discovered that sometimes the most important truths have been right in front of us all along. He looked at Chloe, and she felt that familiar flutter in her chest. The same feeling she'd had as a 7-year-old girl playing in gardens that seemed magical. My company was infiltrated by people who used my illness and my desperation to help other patients as a cover for their own theft. While I was trying to develop affordable treatments, they were stealing from the very people we were meant to serve. The FBI's investigation has not only cleared my name, but also recovered over $40 million that will be returned to affected patients and families. A reporter pushed forward. What's next for Castellano Enterprises? Castellano Enterprises is being dissolved, Vincent announced. In its place, my partner Chloe Martins and I are establishing the Maria Elena Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to providing free medical care and treatment advocacy for underserved communities. Chloe smiled through her tears as Vincent continued. Sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what really matters. I lost my company, my reputation, nearly my life, but I found my purpose, and I found my way back to the person who was always meant to be my home. Later that evening, Chloe and Vincent stood in the community garden behind St. Catherine's Hospital. They'd started working here during Vincent's recovery, finding peace in growing things, in nurturing life. So, Vincent said, kneeling carefully beside the tomato plants they'd planted together, there's something I need to ask you. Chloe laughed, pretending not to notice the small velvet box in his hands. Oh no, are you going to ask me to help you weed again? Because I told you, I'm a nurse, not a farmer. Chloe Martins, Vincent said, his voice shaking with emotion, you saved my life in that hospital room. But more than that, you saved my soul. You taught me that love isn't about what we can get, but what we can give. He opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single diamond. But Chloe's breath caught not at the ring, but at what was beside it, a tiny silver bracelet, clearly very old. That bracelet, she whispered. It was your grandmother's. She left it with my father before you moved away, asked him to give it to you someday when it was safe. I've been carrying it for 20 years, waiting for the right moment. Chloe's tears fell freely now. Vincent, marry me, Chloe. Not because we found each other again, but because we choose each other now. Every day. In sickness and in health, in scandal and vindication, in all the beautiful, messy, miraculous moments still to come. Yes, Chloe whispered, then louder. Yes. As Vincent slipped the ring onto her finger, then fastened the bracelet around her wrist, Chloe felt the presence of everyone who had loved them into this moment. Her grandmother Maria Elena, Vincent's father who had tried to protect them, all the patients who had taught her about resilience, all the broken places that had led them here. You know what I realized? Chloe said as they swayed together in the garden, the hospital lights twinkling around them. What's that? That day when you woke up, when I dropped the washcloth in the basin, that wasn't the miracle. Vincent pulled back to look at her. No, Chloe smiled, touching the bracelet on her wrist. The miracle was that we never stopped believing in love, even when we forgot each other's names. The miracle was that we became people worthy of the love we dreamed of as children. The miracle, Vincent said, kissing her softly, was that your grandmother's song found its way back to both of us. As they walked back toward the hospital, hand in hand, Chloe thought about all the patients inside those walls. People fighting battles, people losing hope, people discovering that sometimes the most profound healing happens not to our bodies, but to our hearts. Tomorrow, she would return to her work as a nurse. Vincent would continue his treatment and their foundation work. They would face new challenges, new battles, new opportunities to choose love over fear. But tonight, under the stars above the garden where broken things grew into something beautiful, they were simply Chloe and Vincent. Two people who had found their way back to each other and forward to a love that was worth waiting a lifetime to claim. In room 314, an elderly patient named Mrs. Washington was having trouble sleeping. Through her window, she could see the young couple in the garden, and something about their joy reminded her of her own long-ago love story. She smiled and closed her eyes, thinking of her late husband and the way he used to say that love always finds a way, even when it takes the longest, most impossible route to get there. Some stories, she thought as sleep finally came, are worth waiting for. And somewhere in the quiet halls of St. Catherine's Hospital, in the place where Chloe and Vincent's future began, the steady beep of monitors kept rhythm like a heartbeat, like a lullaby, like the sound of miracles happening one breath at a time. The end.